Today we're going to learn how to make a cylinder on the wheel. The first thing we need to do is start with between 2.5 and 3 pounds of clay. As you can see, it's wedged. Just like any other thing that we make on the wheel, we want to make sure that it looks good, so we're going to pack it into a ball. The better it looks, the less imperfections you'll have. Now we want to add small amounts of water to the wheel head, so that way it sticks. And we slap it down. We want to get the wheel going at a pretty fast speed, and we want to add water so that the clay slides through our hands. Placing our hands on either side of the clay, we want to go through and we want to add more moisture and make it so that it becomes a lot softer to work with. So we're going to cone our clay. I am squeezing the clay between my hands. I'm roughly using this area here on both parts of my hand. And I am keeping my elbows on my lap for security. And as you can see, it is tapering. It's going from thin to thick. And we are extending the surface area. We want to make sure we're always adding water so that way we reduce friction and it doesn't stick to our hands. And again, I am sliding my hands up to the top. From there, we want to place our left hand on the outside, and we want to place our right hand on the top, and we want to start to bring the clay down. As I bring the clay down, my left hand will be in control. As I bring it down, my left hand has to slowly give back, so that way it can actually come down. So as I push, I make sure there's no gap between my hands, because if there were, the clay would escape. And I'm bringing it down slowly. As you can see, we still have a little bit of a wobble, so what we want to go through now is we want to center our piece. Adding more water. We always want our clay to be shiny. I'm going to use my left hand, and I'm going to push away from my body. I'm just pushing away from my body. As I push away with my left hand, I'm going to make a fist with my right hand, and I'm going to push down. So I'm pushing down and I'm pushing away. My right hand is slowly sliding across the top to even it out. If you do have any air bubbles, sometimes you can squeeze them right out. And I go back and forth. You know that it's level and you know that it is centered when you do not have a wobble. So if you place your hand on the side here and it slides through smoothly, you're alright. You want to make sure that when you're pushing away, that when you're finished, you slowly take your hands away, because if I have pressure and I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I'm pushing and I stop and I take my hands away fast, you can see how we are not centered. But it's an easy fix. Add more water, push away with my left, push down with my right. And this time I'm just going to slowly ease off the pressure, and we're centered. Next thing we want to do is we want to open our piece up. Adding a little more water. My left hand is gently up against the back end, and I'm going to use my middle finger because it is longer and it won't get in the way. So I'm not putting any pressure with my left, it's just there for a guide. My middle finger drops right in. I want to leave about thumb thickness on the bottom so that way I can turn it into a cylinder or a mug later on. I recommend when you first start making pieces to, once you've opened it, turn the wheel off. Find your needle tool. And we want to stab the center. We want to take our finger, we want to slide it down the edge until your finger reaches the bottom, and then you want to grab the needle tool, and now you know that you have at least a thumb's thickness. From here we're going to go a little bit slower and we're going to create the bottom of our cylinder. Again, I add more water. My thumb is gently up against the back, my middle finger is back in the center, and I'm going to pull towards me, keeping my finger flat and level, so that way I have a flat and level bottom. If you have difficulty pulling towards yourself with just your left hand, You can always use your right hand. Make sure that your elbows are always on your lap. So as I pull towards me, I'm trying to make sure that it stays nice and level. And I don't want to be pushing with my thumb. It's just there for a guide. So I haven't really changed the overall profile on the outside. Once you have it to the size you want it to be, we need to go through and compact our bottom. We need to strengthen it. So holding your sponge in your right hand, we start in the center and we slide to 3 o'clock. I'm pushing down gently, sliding to the edge of the wall. Once I reach the wall, I'm going to slide back to the center. We want to be careful not to push too far down because we still want to have a bottom to our pot. When it's nice and level and there are no rings, we know we're ready to create the wall. Once again, I add water to the whole surface, and just by squeezing it on one edge rather than chasing it all around, I know that I'm always going to have water on the outside and the inside. When working, we always want to stay about 6 o'clock, so that way we're nice and comfortable on our lap and we're not all the way out over here, not supporting our elbows. So what I want to do is I'm gently going to squeeze between my thumb and my finger, my middle finger, so that way it doesn't get in the way and it's longer. My thumb is on the outside, my middle finger is on the inside, and I'm just gently going to squeeze the clay. As I squeeze the clay, I'm slowly sliding my hand up. If I go fast, I create ripples, and then your walls are uneven and don't have the strength that they need. You can pull up your wall up as many times as you need to. I recommend more, so that way you're not making it too thin too fast. So my middle finger goes back to the center and my thumb is on the outside, and I'm gently squeezing the clay and I'm slowly sliding up. Just like anything we make with clay, we want to make sure that the wall of our piece is not thicker than pinky and not too thin. So right now I can push this a little bit further, and I have more clay down here that I can work with as well. So I'm going to add a little more water. My thumb is again on the outside. As you can see, I'm pushing in, and now you can see the clay that I'm grabbing. And slowly sliding up. I'm happy with the thickness of my piece here. I don't want to go any thinner, because the thinner it is, the weaker it is. I'm going to go through and I'm going to remove some of the excess water from the center, just so that way it doesn't start to break down the clay. Oops. I want to go back and I want to finish my top edge, not because I made a mistake, but because I need to compact my top edge. So using my left hand, I'm going to gently let the clay slide through, and holding the sponge in my right hand, I'm going to push down. I want to stay on top of my fingers as opposed to being somewhere else, because my left hand is making sure that the wall doesn't move. So gently letting it slide through, I'm taking the sponge and I am compacting that top edge. We do this so that it becomes a little bit more dense and thicker, as well as cleans up the edge so that it's round if you do turn it into a mug or a cup. Another thing we want to do is we want to make it so that our cylinder is the true cylinder, and we want to make it so that the bottom is flat and the walls are flat where they meet up. So our fingers are naturally rounded, so when we were pinching, it created a roundness. So I'm just going to take my finger, add a small amount of water down the edge. I'm going to take my finger and I'm just going to run down the edge. This will make it so that our walls are an even thickness and it doesn't have too much weight at the bottom of our wall. If you push too hard, you can always go back and use your sponge. Notice how my elbows stay on my lap, and I can just correct any of the imperfections that I've made. Go back, just take care of some of the extra moisture on the top. Now I want to go through and I want to remove some of the extra clay down here at the bottom, so that way we are getting rid of some thickness. By taking your wooden tool, we're going to go through and we're going to change the profile so it matches the inside. We just slowly take away amounts of clay until it's no longer thicker than the portions up top. You can change the angle of your wooden tool to clean up some of the stuff that gets stuck to the bat, which is the blue plate that attaches your clay to the wheel. I always like to make a notch at the bottom, so that way when we remove it from the bat, it makes it a little bit easier. turn the wheel off. And now I want to remove it from the wheel. We have options when placing it. We have a non-laminated board which will pull out moisture if you're trying to let it dry faster. And then we also have a laminated board which will make it so that it doesn't take out too much moisture if you're not going to be trimming it right away. I have my wire tool. Make sure that it's clean from any debris. I wrap it around my fingers and I hold my thumbs up, and then as I push it down, I press my thumbs down and I pull it tight. The first drag through releases it from the bat itself, and once again I want to reduce the friction between the clay, so I add some water just to the bat, not to the piece itself, and then I'm going to drag through and it lets go. Hopefully you don't drop it. When pushing it off, we always want to push from the bottom because that's where it has the most weight, and it can still slide freely. And then I can place it and it's ready to be wrapped. And that's a cylinder.